Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I am so excited for this episode for my friend and former colleague, Anna Wilkerson. Anna, tell everybody a little about who you are.
Hi, so I'm Anna Wilkerson. I am a math interventionist at John C. Webb Elementary, and I am just wrapping up my 5th year in education.
Well, Anna, I am so excited to be here and talking with you today. And so, when I talk with educators, one of the first questions I always love to start these conversations with is becoming a teacher. And so at some point in your life, you had to realize that that was a path for you. And so were you one of those who, like, from when you were really little, you were going to be a teacher, or did that come into your mind like later down the road?
It definitely happened later down the road. So growing up, I was one of those rare kids. I had no idea what I wanted to be. I knew I loved animals, and everybody's advice when it came to college was just pursue that and something will come of it. And so I did. I got I majored in animal science in college and ended up becoming a zookeeper. And that, interestingly enough, kind of led me down the road to education. And I did alt cert and ended up in 4th grade math.
Well, and then I got to work with you for 4 years over there at Webb, and I loved learning more and more about you, because I want to jump right on into the zookeeper stuff before we jump into more teacher stuff, because that is just so unique. Like, you don't hear a lot of people doing that at all. And so, talk to me a little bit about what were your responsibilities at the zoo?
So I was a hoofstock keeper, and it was an amazing 2 years. I got to do some really cool things. So I was part of a team of 8 at the Houston Zoo, and I took care of the rhinos, giraffes, okapi, zebra. We had 72 different species in our hoofstock collection. So I took care of a pretty good portion of the zoo. I did some training with the Ankole cattle. It was an amazing, unique experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Did you have a favorite animal?
The okapi, hands down.
And why?
They are surprisingly friendly for a wild animal. And in the wild, they are very elusive. A lot of researchers, they're from the Congo, and a lot of researchers haven't even seen them in the wild. But at the zoo, they are like big dogs. They'll walk up behind you and they wrap their big tongue around your neck, and they're incredible.
Oh man, I just when you said that, I was like, oh, that just sounds gross, but it's so cool that those wild animals will pop up and do that. So did you have one that was like, because as we walk in the zoo, as just people who are walking down, there's some animals that are just very intimidating. Was there one that was really intimidating for you?
We had a maned wolf who somehow came to be in the hoofstock collection. He lived with our giant anteater. And maned wolves, they're very shy, but they're large animals. They're about the size of a Great Dane. And because this maned wolf was so shy, we went in with him. He wasn't protected contact. He was in the enclosure when we cleaned, and I was terrified of this wolf. He was so sweet. He never did anything, but it was scary.
I would have been the exact same way. I could totally relate to that. Well, so when you were there at the zoo, I know that the Houston Zoo does like these educational classes, and sometimes the zookeepers do zoo talks and things. Were you a part of like things like that too?
I was. So that's actually what led me to being a teacher. But the keeper talks are part of your requirement as a keeper. And so I would give educational talks about the rhinos, the giraffes, and sometimes a different species like the tapir or anteater. And I discovered that when the zoo camps would come through, I loved talking to these groups of kids, and they were so excited and genuinely interested. And it just kind of put that little bug in the back of my head that eventually led to this.
It's so cool because my wife and I got to go to one of those educator events that the Houston Zoo does. And I know you went as well that time that we went. And it was so neat just getting to be an educator and learning about what the zoo has to offer and the ways you can use animals and math and science and all these things in all of your forms of instruction. And so, you talk about how you were leading those animal talks and things like that. And then that led you to say, you know what, I think teaching is the next route. And so when you were going to get alternatively certified, were you still working at the zoo as well?
I was not. So I had a unique opportunity. My husband's family owns a petting zoo in Humble. And so when I decided I wanted to become a teacher, his dad was very generous. And he told me, you know what, leave the zoo, come work at the park. It'll free you up. And so I spent a year working there while I worked on my alt cert.
Okay, I gotta say, I think that is hilarious that you worked at a zoo as a zookeeper, and then you still got to work with animals even while you were working on becoming a teacher. And so, you get your certification, you get your first job, and so, you've been in teaching now. This is your 5th year, and you spent the last 4 years as a 4th grade math science teacher. Now you get to be an interventionist. So you've had a couple of different experiences already. What do you feel like you've really learned about yourself through teaching?
That I'm a lot braver and more courageous than I thought. It was definitely stepping outside my comfort zone. I'm very introverted. I have a lot of social anxiety. And so it was intimidating.
Yeah.
I love working with the kids, but coming in to work with this large team of educators who are all very passionate, they're educated, they know what they're doing. And to come into that environment as a newbie with basically big ideas, but no clue, it was scary. And I've learned that, I can step up and work hard. And I feel like I've, kind of fit in along the way. And
well, I will say that you doing this interview alone, for those listening that don't know Anna, this is a huge testament to Anna getting braver and braver, because for her even agreeing to do this conversation through video, I was like, oh my gosh, she agreed with me. But Anna, you made a really interesting comment there that I kind of want to ask. I want to think about and talk about. You are alternatively certified, so it's not your first job, you're not your first degree, but when you came in, even as an introvert and with that anxiety, you came into a really large campus for your first experience. So how did you kind of work through that anxiety where it wasn't crippling?
I had an amazing team. I still have an amazing team, but those first few years, especially, they were so supportive, and I never would have made it through without them. Anytime I had a question, I needed anything, they were right there to help, and I would not have survived without them.
Well, I talked to a teacher the other day who was her second job as well. And she mentioned kind of having some of that anxiety as well, of thinking of, okay, this is not my first choice of a career. So I wonder if people are going to judge me on that. Am I going to stand up as good as them because they knew they always wanted to be a teacher from when they were little bitty? Like, did you have any of those thoughts as well?
Definitely. And especially when it came time for the Tell Your Story book, I thought, what do I have to offer? Why do people want to listen to me? I was a zookeeper. They probably think I have no business being here. But I think having seen that other side, having done other careers, it really makes me appreciate it even more.
Well, I think that's what was great about what you brought into the classroom is that, in addition to you bringing that love of animals and zookeeping, when those kind of things went into your room, it was like I could tell that was a passion of yours. And I think, something I've been talking about a lot lately with the last couple of episodes is that, it is okay for your passions to change as you grow and move through life. And just because you love teaching now doesn't mean you love animals any less. It means you're pursuing something different. And so what is your favorite way to bring in that love of animals into the classroom or with your students?
I love just the opportunistic teaching moments, especially when I was in my 4th grade classroom and an animal picture would pop up in the lesson or something like that. And my kids all knew I was a zookeeper. Most of them still do. And just they would start asking me questions, and I actually had good knowledge that I could share with them. And it was just really fun to kind of ignite that love of animals within them and that appreciation.
Do you ever see yourself going ever back to any kind of job like that?
Probably not. I really love education. I think I'll stay.
Well, I can tell you, you are one that when I would watch you teach, you could tell you had a love for it, but you're also really good about small moments with students, especially when you're in small group or when you were having those other conversations with only 4 or 5 kids. And I think that's what really benefits probably you with your intervention job as well now. And so did you see that as a strength of yours, as being better with a small group of students than with a huge 30 group, or was that something you kind of learned into?
Group was always my favorite part of the day. I loved it because I felt like in the big class, it's harder to have those really good connections and those good like aha moments. But in small group, you just get so much accomplished in such a small amount of time, and you can have really genuine conversations with the kids.
So, growing up, what kind of student were you? How were you in school?
I was very quiet and I was a straight A student. I kept my head down, I worked hard, and I just got through it.
Did you enjoy school when you were in it, or was it just kind of something to go through?
I loved it. I was very good at it, and I definitely enjoyed school.
I can tell that. And so, Anna, when you're surrounded by people online you may be learning from, PD you go to, people you work with who are doing as equal as great stuff as you are. And so, I talked a little bit about you coming in and being alternatively certified, but I wonder now, now that you've got some background in teaching, when you see all these people doing these great things, some which fit your personality, some which don't, you got to pull what you like and what you want to do. How do you keep doubt from coming back in and crippling you? How do you not let it take root?
It's tough, especially, going to these PDs, and as an interventionist, you do have that little piece in the back of your head that says, you don't have the background these people do, you're not good enough. And I think I've come so far. And when I start to doubt myself, I think about that first year as to where I am now and how much I have grown.
Right.
And I think as long as you're willing to kind of be a sponge, I try to learn from everybody I interact with, every teacher I talk to. And I think that's very important in our job.
Well, something else that I think you really have a love for is horses. And I know that that's really an outlet for you too, which I love that you have that, because I think, so many educators, we get so caught up in the world of teaching that we don't ever disconnect from it, and we can easily burn out. And so, we talked about a love for animals, but has a love for horses always been there specifically, or was that something else that you grew into?
It's been there always. It's weird. I'm the only person in my family who loves horses, and I've been obsessed with them since I can remember. I took my first riding lesson when I was 9, and I never looked back. So I rode in college. It's always been a part of who I am.
So, when you say you rode, do you do show horses, right?
I currently don't. I did then. I was on the IHSA team, which is the intercollegiate team. And so we would travel around the state and do the horse shows. I've done some showing as an adult, but it's very time consuming. So I don't really do it much now.
when you talk about going and doing those shows, what does that look like?
So I do hunter jumpers, and so they give you a pattern of jumps, and you go in there. In IHSA in college, you were on a horse you had never ridden before, but now as an adult, I'm on my own horse. And you're judged basically on how your horse goes around the course, how you look on your horse, and it's just meant to be very smooth and relaxed.
So let me. Did I hear you correctly that you said in college when you do it, when you show up at the event, they give you a horse you've never ridden before?
Yes, and that's true for both IHSA and NCAA. So you go and you literally draw a horse's name out of a hat who you've never been on. They adjust your stirrups, you hop on, and you're in the show ring showing.
Was that not terrifying?
It was terrifying.
Because I did rodeos when I was a kid too, and to me that sounds like bull riding. Like when you do that, you don't know what bull you're going to ride, but there it's crazy. I mean, obviously these horses I hope would be well behaved, but so that's so crazy. So you get on a horse that you've never ridden before, and then they give you the expectations right there of what they want you to do in that moment, and you just have to go and do it.
Yes. So you know your pattern beforehand, your course, and you draw that horse. You get to watch them warm up. So I got to see other riders on them. So you knew kind of if they were a little quirky, but it was intimidating, but you learn a lot.
Wow. That's so interesting to me. I've never got to talk to anybody about that. And so to think about that, I mean, I would just be so nervous the whole time. I don't even know if I could do it. And so, Anna, when you look back on your life and you think of all the things you've been through, the successes, the trials, the positives, the negatives, all that kind of stuff, and you're reflecting on your path, what is one thing that really comes to mind that you think that was pretty instrumental into creating the woman we see today?
Oh gosh, I think just having the faith in myself to change careers like that, because it was a big leap of faith.
Yeah.
And it paid off and it worked out. But I mean, I think just having the courage in yourself to know that if this is something I want, I can go after it and I can do it.
Well, and I think that's a big deal because I think having that inner courage is difficult, especially when you're jumping into something totally different. It wasn't something you grew up wanting to do, but you found out you loved it. And so it's terrifying. And even when you're in it, it's equally as terrifying. And so, when you think about those people who've played an important role in your life too, who's one that really stands out?
Oh, my grandma. My grandma helped raise me. I grew up with a single dad, and she was just always there. She supported anything I had. And I mean, when I told her I wanted to be a teacher, she was, yes, you can do this. You'll be great at it. There was no hesitation and just always there.
It's so funny you mentioned that because, I think of my own grandma and her saying the same kind of stuff and doing all that as well. So I love that you mentioned her. Well, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that you also contributed a story to our book, Stories from Webb. And so, when that idea came up, were you immediately like, I might consider this, or were you like, that's not for me. I'm not even going to do that. Like, how was that path for you?
I thought it was an amazing opportunity, but I felt like as an alt cert who had been a zookeeper, who wanted to hear my story? What did I really have to contribute that they didn't already know? And so it was around the second or third email that you sent out that I was like, maybe I should do this. And so I did.
And so tell everybody kind of what you wrote about.
I wrote about an experience I had my second year where I felt like despite how hard I was trying, I didn't really feel like I was making a difference. And I tried so hard. I put everything I had into it, and I just didn't know if I was really sinking into these kids. And it was at the end of the year, I had a mom come up and tell me that her son, for the first time, would come home and talk about how he loved school. He was excited to go. And it was kind of that moment where I realized I am doing something. Like, I'm doing a good job and I am making a difference for these kids. And it was a moment.
Your story really resonated with me when I read it because I think, so many of us in education, we feel like we pour everything and we're like, is any of this even mattering? And then there's those little bitty moments that pop up unexpectedly where you realize, wow, that really did make an impact. That really did matter to someone. So I love that story. Well, Anna, one question I always love to end all these conversations on is I feel like as people, we hold things really close to our hearts and what we believe in and what we love. And so for the people who might be listening or watching today, if they were to walk away with one thing, what would your one thing be?
I think just to give yourself some grace. You're your own biggest critic, and you're probably doing a much better job than you think you are. And so just give yourself a break.
I love that. And that's the perfect way to end this. Anna, I adore you. I love the work that you do. And I'm so excited that you agreed to come on today. So thank you so much for being on Tell Your Story.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you go, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Anna has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story because every story matters.